Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. Never was anything great achieved without danger. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage, but fear preserves you by a dread of punishment which never fails. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. How we live is so different from how we ought to live, that he who studies what ought to be done, rather than what is done, will learn the way to his downfall, rather than to his preservation. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch, because everyone can see but few can test by feeling. Everyone sees what you seem to be, few know what you really are, and those few do not dare take a stand against the general opinion. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Men are so simple of mind, and so much dominated by their immediate needs, that a deceitful man will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. A man who is used to acting in one way never changes. He must come to ruin when the times, in changing, no longer are in harmony with his ways. There is nothing more important than appearing to be religious. A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who are most excellent, so that if he does not attain to their greatness, at any rate he will get some tinge of it. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Of mankind we may say in general they are fickle, hypocritical, and greedy of gain. Any man who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin among the great number who are not good. Hence a prince who wants to keep his authority must learn how not to be good and use that knowledge, or refrain from using it, as necessity requires. Wisdom consists of knowing how to distinguish the nature of trouble, and in choosing the lesser evil. It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. He who becomes a prince through the favor of the people should always keep on good terms with them, which it is easy for him to do, since all they ask is not to be oppressed. There is no avoiding war, it can only be postponed to the advantage of your enemy. It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. He who builds on the people, builds on the mud. Everyone who wants to know what will happen, ought to examine what has happened. Everything in this world in any epoch, has their replicas in antiquity. A prince must not have any other object nor any other thought, but war, its institutions, and its discipline, because that is the only art befitting one who commands. Nature creates few men brave, industry and training makes many. Men never do good, unless necessity drives them to it. But when they are free to choose, and can do just as they please, confusion and disorder become rampant. One can say this in general of men. They are ungrateful, disloyal, insincere and deceitful, timid of danger and avid of profit. Love is a bond of obligation that these miserable creatures break whenever it suits them to do so, but fear holds them fast by a dread of punishment that never passes. One should never fall in the belief that you can find someone to pick you up. My view is that it is desirable to be both loved and feared, but it is difficult to achieve both, and, if one of them has to be lacking, it is much safer to be feared than loved. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Men intrinsically do not trust new things that they have not experienced themselves. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. A prudent man will always try to follow in the footsteps of great men and imitate those who have been truly outstanding, so that, if he is not quite as skillful as they, at least some of their ability may rub off on him. It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. He who causes another to become powerful ruins himself, for he brings such a power into being either by design or by force, and both of these elements are suspects to the one whom he has made powerful. Everything that occurs in the world, in every epoch, has something that corresponds to it in ancient times. Being feared and not hated go well together, and the prince can always do this, if he does not touch the property, or the women of his citizens and subjects. One who deceives, will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Hence it comes that all armed prophets have been victorious, and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed. From this arises the question whether it is better to be loved rather than feared, or feared rather than loved. It might perhaps be answered that we should wish to be both. But since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. For whoever believes that great advancement and new benefits make men forget old injuries is mistaken. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are. Appear as you may wish to be. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. For one change always leaves a dovetail into which another will fit. The new ruler must determine all the injuries that he will need to inflict. He must inflict them once and for all. One must be a fox in order to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten off wolves. Those who simply act like lions are stupid. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot. He who is highly esteemed is not easily conspired against. A man who wishes to profess at all times will come to ruin among so many who are not good. God creates men, but they choose each other. You ought never to suffer your designs to be crossed in order to avoid war, since war is not so to be avoided, but is only deferred to your disadvantage.